Welcome to Better HR in 10 minutes, where we take a question or a thought important to human resources professionals and discuss it in 10 minutes or less from the perspectives of an employment lawyer and an EEO trainer. I'm the employment attorney. My name's Sarah Glasser.
And I'm the trainer, Rodney Klein.
Okay, keep in mind, although I'm a lawyer, what we're talking about today is not legal advice, as everyone watching knows by now. Um, so Rodney, we were talking DEI in our last video that we made, and we kind of acknowledged that it's this giant topic. There's so many ways that you can turn off of the main road and get onto a side road.
Mm.
And one of the more interesting side roads that we ended up on was talking about numbers. And so I thought it would be really kind of a fun conversation to kind of run through where numbers are problematic when we're talking about DEI. And we talked about that last time.
Mhm.
So quotas, trying to meet a number, definitely a problem. But but as you said earlier before we turned on the recorder, if you try to scrap your numbers, you're going to find yourself in a difficult position as well. So you take the mic, you tell us.
You know what? Last time we talked about, hey, quotas and preferences are always going to be a problem, and quotas and preferences are going to be based on numbers. And so the legitimate question comes back is, so you're saying we shouldn't do numbers at all? And I'm like, well, it just depends on how you use the number. And I'm going to say something here that's some people will disagree with. And the thing I have to say is that I don't think diversity should be a goal, right? I think diversity kind of is. But when we make it a goal, it almost immediately becomes problematic. And it becomes problematic because the first thing we do is reduce it to a number. And then we're sitting there going, okay, well, here's our goal. We have to reach this percentage. That, of course, puts pressure on managers to hire people because they're in certain groups, and that's just taken us in the wrong direction. And not only is that potentially illegal, I think it's a little lazy because what it doesn't do is it doesn't address the root cause, the thing that's really important to us. And what's really important to us is removing barriers to entry. So, in other words, if you can use numbers, but numbers should be used as like a flag, an indicator that something may be wrong, that something might be a barrier. So let me give you an example. Let's say I own a business and I'm in San Antonio, I'm in Bexar County, and I employ electricians. And I know that 40% of the electricians in Bexar County are Hispanic. I made that up. I have no idea. But I look and only 5% of my electricians are Hispanic. So what I find sometimes people will do is say, well, let's get to that 40 number. No,
Mm.
that's not the point. The point is why is there that disparity? And is it because of chance or is it because I've actually set up a barrier to entry? So let's say I go back and look and I find out that only 5% of my applicants are Hispanic or have Hispanic surnames. So what do I know? I am not recruiting Hispanic electricians like I should. I'm leaving potential applicants out there. And so can I have a program that targets Hispanic electricians for recruiting because I'm under recruiting them? Absolutely. That's opening things up for applicants. And I say that there's a law of large applicant pools, right? The more people, the larger the pools, the greater the overall quality of the pool, then that means more choices and lower prices. If we artificially restrict them, the opposite happens. It means fewer choices and higher prices. So we want as many qualified applicants as we can. So that's good stuff. That identifies a potential issue. But let's just take this another step further. If I look and let's say 40% of my applicants are Hispanic, but only 5% of my hires are Hispanic, well, that's that's not illegal, right? A number never makes anything illegal. It's what does that number represent? And does that represent a barrier? So what that does is it should encourage me to go back through my hiring processes to see if I have a barrier to entry to Hispanic hires. And maybe I do, and I can address that barrier and remove it. Or maybe I find out that it's just a result of chance. But going through that process is the important part, not hitting a number, but removing the barrier. Is that, from a legal point of view, Sarah, am I on the right track here?
Well, it makes sense to me. So you're using it as a diagnostic tool
Mhm.
as opposed to a goal that you are looking to meet. And not only are you using it to determine your problem on the front end or to recognize or diagnose your issue on the front end, but you can use it as a measurement tool as you go through as well. Um, by by increasing my applicant pool, am I bringing myself closer to this number? Uh, and that's there's no illegality or a problem with evaluating yourself as opposed to what a number or quota ought be. You just can't take affirmative action to get to that quota. And affirmative action is a legal term. I don't know if that's right to
Yeah,
use
yeah.
in this
Which
situation,
is
but
another topic
yeah,
altogether.
another topic. So I didn't mean it in its legal sense. I just meant, you can't cheat and try to get to the number. And it's not dissimilar to this is not a new topic. We've used statistics, employment lawyers and employers have used statistics for years in order to root out issues or diagnose problems. If you're conducting a reduction in force at your organization, your employment lawyer is probably going to tell you, hopefully, going to tell you that you need to run a statistical analysis of all of the folks who are eligible for that RIF to root out and look for areas where you may potentially have a an issue. So this is just that.
Yeah, and I think that that's the point of what we're trying to talk about today is, look, there's no reason to scrap a number. It's just we need to use the numbers in the correct way. There's incorrect ways to use numbers, and there's correct ways to use numbers. And to kind of wrap it up, when I was at the ESC, I was something called a small business liaison, which means I just answered questions from employers who called, which was the least bureaucratic thing I did, and I loved it. So one day I'm sitting there and I get a call from a person that worked for a city that shall remain nameless. And they said, we ran our affirmative action report and it said we're 25 Hispanics short in this one area. So our boss told us to go out and hire 25 Hispanics. Can we do that? And I went, no. And without missing a beat, the guy said, yeah, we all know that, but we wanted to be able to tell our boss that you said so. And I'm like, yeah, give me my name and telephone number if he has any questions. So use the numbers the right way.
Yeah, that's not dissimilar from some phone calls that I get where my client says, I kind of knew that was the answer. I just needed you to tell me.
True, true.
So, your employment lawyer is here for you in any which way, as is Rodney.
Yep. Well, hopefully that was helpful. And please let us know if we can be of any further assistance to you.